heavens, it really has been Back to the Future researching this hymn. Led on a wild goose chase, I traveled back and forth, even delving into old manuscripts, all of which was really unnecessary, turned out. However, we do a little bit of time travel this week as we explore "O Jesus, I Have Promised," including a 1593 teleportation of a Spanish soldier. The first instance of our hymn is from 1593. Let's take a look at what was happening in 1593. A synod at Uppsala Cathedral in Sweden settled a 19-year liturgical debate over what creeds and which forms of masses should be considered orthodox for the Lutheran Church of Sweden. Adrian van Uumen, a Flemish mathematician, expanded pi to 15 decimal points, not knowing that Al-Kashani, a Persian astronomer and mathematician, had already made it to 16 places in the 14th century during the reign of the Mongol Emperor Timur. Speaking of the Emperor Timur, Christopher Marlowe, whose play Tamburlaine about that emperor was a milestone in the theater, dies in 1593 from stab wounds under very mysterious circumstances. Marlowe's contemporary, William Shakespeare, published his most frequently reprinted work, the poem Venus and Adonis. Now, as I mentioned earlier about a 1593 teleportation, Gil Perez, a Spanish soldier, was on guard duty at the Spanish governor's palace in Manila in the Philippines, when in the blink of an eye he was transported from Manila all the way to Mexico City's Zocalo. He was as confused as everybody else. However, he was locked up as being crazy, as a servant of the devil. But months later, his incredible tale was corroborated by passengers arriving from Spain. 16th century teleportation? Truth or fiction? You be the judge. Our lyrics were written by the Reverend John Ernest Bode for the confirmation of his daughter and 2 sons. His schooling was phenomenal. He began at Eton, the school that has produced 20 of England's prime ministers. He also attended Charterhouse, another of the British, quote, public schools, or what we would call private boarding schools. He then went on to Christ Church College, Oxford, where he read classics and subsequently became a don, that is, a tutor. He was also elected an examiner in classics. Examiners are the ones who write the exam questions and score examination papers. Exams come at the end of 3 years of study, and they're all subjective. They usually have one question, and you're given 3 hours to write an essay in response to that question to show your knowledge, or lack of it, or your ability in a subject. Examiners then grade those essays, and that determines the type of degree you receive. Bode took on holy orders in 1841, becoming the rector of St. Mary's Church in Westwell, Oxfordshire, in 1847. In 1869, he became vicar of All Saints, the 14th century Saxon church in Castle Camps, Cambridgeshire. He was chosen in 1855 to give the prestigious Bampton Lectures at Oxford. Since 1780, these lectures have been presented, quote, for the exposition and defense of the Christian faith. Bode's lectures were entitled the absence of precision in the formularies of the Church of England. A proficient hymn writer and poet, his occasional poems were published in 1858, and in 1860 we saw the publication of his hymns from the Gospel of the day for each Sunday and festivals of our Lord. O Jesus, I Have Promised, as stated earlier, was written on the occasion of his children's confirmation at All Saints Church. However, it is important to note that the original was communal. It said, O Jesus, we have promised, rather than the individual, O Jesus, I have promised. His words have been sung to various tunes. About 4 are in common use today. The tune in evangelical worship comes from Munich, from a 16th century book, the Gesangbuch of Dresden. Felix Mendelssohn, in 1846, used this tune to create his quartet, Cast Thy Burden Upon the Lord, from the oratorio Elijah. Mendelssohn was born in 1809. He was a special friend of Goethe's and was the preeminent composer and performer of his day. Mendelssohn's first performance was at the age of 9, and by 16 he had composed several symphonies. The son of a Jewish banker, he and his family converted and were baptized into the Lutheran Church. It is thanks to Mendelssohn that we know J.S. Bach. At the age of 20, he conducted the St. Matthew Passion in Berlin, the first performance of this incredible work since Bach's death. This performance led to the wide dissemination of Bach's music. Thank you, Felix Mendelssohn, for returning Bach to us. Mendelssohn organized the cathedral choir in Berlin and founded the Leipzig Conservatory of Music in 1843, serving as composer and director of music at Leipzig's Gewandhaus. Mendelssohn was greatly influenced by Bach and embraced a more mainstream approach to composition. This set him apart from his contemporaries, especially Wagner, whose animosity for Mendelssohn reflected Wagner's anti-Jewish prejudice, even though Mendelssohn had become a Lutheran. Wagner stated that Jews were incapable of writing good music, and Wagner remained obsessed with denigrating Mendelssohn long after Mendelssohn had died at the very young age of 38 in Leipzig. Arguably, the best-known piece by Mendelssohn for most people is, of course, his wedding march from the incidental music for A Midsummer Night's Dream. It is Mendelssohn's harmonization of the hymn, O Jesus, I Have Promised, which we sing today.